Hello guys, today I have for you another Zefraslayer build, this time running a small engine with Sorc right here, Performer Powell Pendulum Sorcerer. We have the Odd Eye Synchron and then the Seer and the Arc Pendulum Dragon, just like in normal Slayers or pure Slayers, as well as a Dissolver here. This opens up a few more interesting lines. Also lets you end on Vortex most of the time. You can use Synchron to get yourself into Denglong or also access the Ignister Prominence. There's a lot of spicy stuff you can do. Selene does come up in this. Not sure if it's still worth running it though. I took out the Zeus here. You probably just run Zeus here instead, but there's a few lines where it could come up. So just for the test hands, I'm keeping it in here. But it's not in all of the replays. But if it comes up, I'll be sure to mention it. Alright, so for our first replay, we don't actually get to access the Sorc. I wanted to show this off regardless, since the big issue is if you cannot make Electromite or Beyond the Pendulum before your pen summon, you usually don't have a way to access it. Now, this doesn't actually inhibit the deck that much, which I'll be showing here, making sure to summon out the Garuda since it's level 4, so it can help us make rank 4s here. But unfortunately we don't get to actually show off the Sorc line here. However, it's still, what is this, Baguska, Apo, Necro Valley, and a counter trap. Very strong board. Zephyr War, unfortunately not live here. Alright, here we'll be showing off a massive board we can make with this, even though we unfortunately draw our Garnet for face off. At least we didn't also draw the face off itself. Here I'll opt not to use the Ignis Phoenix effect yet. We'll be using it later on potentially, but right here I didn't want to give up the card advantage early. We'll be adding Sorc here. And I was contemplating using the Sorc to pop the Ignis here, but I need to clear my scales for the Sorc line here. We'll be using the Odd Eyes Revolution Dragon to search for the Arc Pendulum, and we'll get the Seer here to pop itself, summon this from deck, and we get our negate here. We still have a normal summon, and we'll use it to get into our Ignister here. And here we get to revive it back again. And now we can use both these effects to summon out 2 more. At this point right here, where we summon the Majesty Pegasus from deck, you would normally activate the effect here, discard the card in your hand to add Necro Valley, which just happened to draw this off Electromite here, but you would just use the draw off Electromite as a discard in order to get to Necro Valley. So the Electromite draw did not matter here. Well, it did matter. It didn't matter that we drew Necro Valley since we still have access to it here anyways. And then since IP is dead here, since we have no cards in hand, Baguska does more harm than good since we have 2 monsters that would be negated here. We just make a Dweller. We already have the Necro Valley, but it does floodgate a little bit more. It's also a lingering effect, so pretty solid board here using the Sorc line, getting us into the Vortex, getting us materials for the Harbinger, for a rank 4, getting access to the Necro Valley through the Slayers again. We have the big Apo, and we still have our Zephyr counter trap here. Now here I wanted to show off a more technical line, which is kind of suboptimal, but I'll be pausing the replay here and showing you what you should be doing instead, and then I'll show off some niche interactions that could come up here. Here we unfortunately get impermed again. Fortunately we get to go into our Beyond here. We have some good scales for follow-up post pen summon. and we'll be using this to still access our counter trap here. Electromite will get us into chronograph here, so we can special out our body here for free. Alright, and at this point, we discard our ad here, and you would normally get Necro Valley here, make an Appaloosa using the Beyond, the Electromite, the Chronograph, the Jackal King, and then overlay these two into Baguska. So you'd end on a 4 negate Apo, a Baguska, Necro Valley, and a counter trap is what you should be doing. But here I wanted to show off another interesting line here. We make the Dweller, so Sky Iris get the Revolution, bring back the Ignister, summon out the green one, and now we activate Dweller to detach a material, so we can summon it back from the grave here. Just let us go into IP on top of this as well, and we have the discard that we got back off of the green, and since we detached the material to send it to grave, we got to reborn that one instead of the one that we added to our hand with green. This lets us have a discard here for making Unicorn off of our spent Dweller. So I'd still recommend the 4 negate Appaloosa, Baguska, Necro Valley counter trap line. Just if you don't have the means to access it, you could go through these kinds of interactions possibly, and it would help you build your board. Alright, here I'll be showing off a line where the Selene would come up, but I didn't use it here. But I'll be showing where you would have used it and how you would have used it. Now we still end on a formidable board. However, it gets kind of awkward here. We have the second Zefrath, since we know we'll be wanting a discard for our Majesty here. Right here, short misplay, I should have summoned out the Ignis Phoenix here, and then I'd have another pop off of the Pensork to add 2 cards, since I really want to resolve the Servant here, since it has enough counters already. And if I pop this, it'll just summon this out, so we basically just get a free body here. Now we do draw the Dissolver off the Electromite, which is pretty unfortunate since it would have been a great discard as well, because you get to actually revive it off the Arc Pendulum. This does come up sometimes. I had to replay with it, but I completely griefed it later on, so I just cut it. We make the Denglong here, showing that you can still make it. And now we go into Ancient Fairy Dragon by level modulating down to level 3. And now we use the Arc Revolution to add the Luster Pendulum, and we get to summon that out, as well as searching for a Necro Valley. Now we add this back, we summon this out, and right here is where the Selene comes up. We obviously have enough spells. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in graveyard, 1 on the field, and we would use the Electromite and the Majesty Pegasus, since it is a spellcaster, to make the Selene. Selene can then summon out Dissolver, and Dissolver makes the Vortex by using itself and the Arc Pendulum here. And then you would use the AFD and the Selene to make Apo. But since we don't have the Selene here, we're just going to be skipping that step, unfortunately, keeping the Dissolver in hand, and going into a 3-mat Apo instead. So here the board, 3-mat Apo, Harbinger, 2 counter traps, Necro Valley. Very powerful board, even though I lost the body earlier on in the combo. And if we used Selene here, we would lose 1 negate off Apo, but get 1 omni-negate. Now, I'll be touching on this later, but the boards you make using the Vortex and having Apo all do lose to Super Poly, but I'll get to that in the recap. Alright, I titled this one Misplay for some reason. I didn't catch it. Just watching it back again was probably that I failed miserably on resolving my servant here. Yeah, I should have activated servant before that. I'm pretty sure I missed a spell counter here now. Yeah, we're short a counter now. That was probably the misplay. That's really unfortunate, but we'll try to salvage it. Nonetheless, our pendulum comes up as a scale 8, which is very, very nice since it lets you pend out things like the Supreme King Gate here. We'll use the astrograph to get another add here. Load up the grave for our fusion. Now we do the standard Seer Arc Pendulum combo here to get the vortex onto the field. And we don't have access to the counter trap here, unfortunately, but it's still a very formidable board with the 3-mana Appaloosa, the Harbinger, a Vortex, Necrovalley, and IP for Unicorn is also live since we have a spare body left over and we have a discard here. Alright, for our final replay, this isn't something actually practical in the way I'm playing it out. I just wanted to show off some interesting theory here, where you can make an early AFD, for example, right here, as well as an early Denglong. This is pretty niche. Probably wouldn't come up like this in a real game either. I wouldn't have played this out if I was actually playing normally, but just wanted to show some of the interactions here. You can also have right here we link them both off into IP, so Denglong can summon a pend, so we get to make Beyond the Pendulum, and now we still get to go into our Pensork line here. Also very interesting, you actually get to revive the AFD. Unfortunately, it is a hard once on both effects. And here we Electromite for Astrograph to get another Zefraslayers. And the interesting thing is 9 Pillars only requires a Yangzing card, and this is a Yangzing card, so even in the scale, it makes 9 Pillars live. They also can't just be over this or whatever, right? So we end on Necrovalley, 3-mana Apo, Vortex, double counter trap, and when we use the 9 Pillars to pop this, we unfortunately don't get the search from it, but Electromite will give us another draw as well, and at least the counter trap is live as well. Alright, so what are my thoughts on this build? I think it's a really interesting way to play the deck. You get another omni-negate out off of just your standard Electromite add. The cards here aren't actually bad to draw. If you draw the Pensork, you don't have to search it. If you draw the Odd-Eye Synchron, you actually get to have your searches for the Pensork, search for Seer and Dissolver, or if you only have one card to pop, you don't have to search for the Dissolver. Selene comes up really nicely in this, since you can like summon out the Dissolver or another Synchron to use its effect as well. Synchron still lets you make Denglong. You saw me summon it out and then use level 3 as a scale to make Denglong. What you can also do is summon the Pensork, obviously, and then scale the Synchron to make this a level 1 tuner, and then you use any of your level 4s that you have. So basically just any of the Zefraslayers, and that also makes Denglong also very nice. Yeah, Seer is a scale 1, which is really nice. You have this as your level 2, and your other primary low scales would be a scale 2 or a scale 3, um, where this won't actually let you summon out Bunbuku. So it's not really bad, especially since your high scale is going to be Zefrath then. Having access to a scale 8, however, is also not bad in most of the cases, since you do run, well, not that many 7s, but it's still not bad necessarily, since you can summon out the Gate 0 to use as another body. Don't think it's ever really worth summoning the Astrograph off your pen summon, but if you have to for some godforsaken reason, go for it. And if you draw the Dissolver, it's actually very nice to discard off of Majesty, as in the combo where Seer pops itself to add back the Revolution, that search for the Pendulum, for the Dark Pendulum. You'll be triggering this, of course, and it can actually summon it from hand, deck, or graveyard. So if it's in your deck, that's great, since your normal searches are these two off of the Pensork, you just summon it out anyways. If it's in your graveyard, because you discarded it for cost to search for your field spell, great, we have a free discard since we summon this out anyways. And if it's just stuck in your hand regardless, that doesn't matter either. You can just still summon it out from your hand. So drawing any of these really isn't bad, which is also very nice. And again, you can search for the other two if you draw one of your search targets for this. Again, Selene comes up really nicely. My issues with this are you kind of need to access the Pensork pre-pen summon, otherwise you're forced to go through Selene, which can be kind of awkward sometimes, or you have to run beyond the Pendulum line. You can also just keep this in the extra deck off of Electromite, but you'd usually want to summon this and Zefranu then, and more often than not you're kind of sad because you're missing a body then, since you only have 2 summons from the extra deck, but you usually have 3 live bodies up there. And another gripe I have is that Vortex and Apo are 2 monsters with different types but the same attribute, just like Baron and Apo. So you just die to Super Poly into Mud Dragon. If you know your opponent's playing it because they're on Tearlaments or Branded, or you know they're boarding into it, kind of possibly not the best line to go for here. And especially since so much of your power budget is geared into making this omni-negate, kind of questionable. However, if you don't think that it's a relevant board breaker in the meta, or if you know your opponent's not playing it, you get a free omni-negate basically. Very, very nice. Problem with the Selene is you kind of have to cut Zeus. There's not really enough space in the extra deck since all these cards can come up. Zeus is great going second. Maybe you could cut the IP Unicorn package since your hand is often depleted as well, and you can more often than not just make a rank 4 instead of the IP. That would also free up another slot, but I really like the toolboxy aspect of this. I don't think it's worth it. Overall, I probably won't be playing this variant personally, but I think it's very interesting nonetheless, and it has a lot of power. There's a lot of very interesting lines you can go through, and I think it's very fun to play.